Hello and welcome to this live and interactive online stream. I'm Kevin Harris. With tomorrow's success dependent on our ability to find intelligent solutions to everyday sustainability challenges that we face, what role can and should business play? In the wake of Ban Ki-moon's address, and with just 2 years to go until the world is set to come together to arrange a globally binding deal, we've assembled some industry experts to share their thoughts and explain what can be achieved at a corporate level. So I'm pleased to say that joining us here today is Dax Lovegrove from the WWF UK, Martin Chilcott from 2 Degrees, and AkzoNobel's Director of Sustainability, André Veneman. Welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for coming along.
Thank you.
Now, don't forget that we are live here today, so if you do have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. You can get in touch with our panel by using the box on your screen, and we'll do our best to tackle them over the course of the next 15 minutes or so. And if you're tweeting whilst watching the show, please send your tweets this way and use the hashtag that is hashtag ANSUSTY, ANSUSTY, and we'll try to give you a mention. So coming up over the course of the next 15 or 20 minutes, we'll be discussing how global issues such as population growth, climate change and resource scarcity are driving major transformations in business. And we'll be looking at how companies can play a key role in addressing these challenges by focusing on getting the greatest positive impact out of the products and services that they offer from the fewest resources. And we'll also be looking at why innovation is key to achieving this. We'll also be talking about why collaboration with customers and suppliers is vital. And we'll be revealing Planet Possible, which is AkzoNobel's commitment to doing more with less. And finally, like I said, our panel will be answering all of your questions, so please do get involved. So guys, thanks ever so much for coming on. Dax, we'll start with you if we may. Why is it that sustainability is becoming such an increasingly important issue, not just for the average man on the street, but for businesses particularly?
I think for any business, it's about survival and success. So at the front end, it's about building a reputation. In this digital age, there is no hiding bad practice. So companies with good practice are going to build solid reputations in a world where we face climate change, resource scarcity, all kinds of global threats. So reputation is absolutely essential. And at the back end, it's about resource resilience. For any business supply chain to function, companies will depend on all kinds of natural assets. So companies being more proactive to take action and protect those vital assets, that's going to make sure that they're in better shape for the future.
And Martin, from your point of view, from 2 Degrees, you're all about helping business become more sustainable. So, how can they go about doing that? Lots of businesses claim to be so, but what can they actually do in real terms?
Well, there's huge amounts. The short answer is huge amounts that they can do. We think that we're very efficient, but in reality, we're pretty inefficient. What we've got very good at in modern business and commerce is creating silos, which are very good at individual tasks. But when you step back and you look at a whole picture, kind of whole ecosystem or system, you feel it's riddled full of waste. So I'll give you a little example. So one of our clients and members has in their organisation, a retailer has in their organisation, somebody who buys loose potatoes. It's a very specific task, and they're probably the best loose potato buyer in the country for all I know, certainly very good at it. And they buy particular potatoes of certain shape and size and quality that the consumer wants at a very good price. But of course, Mother Nature doesn't make potatoes like that. And so when the crop comes out, they leave about a third of the crop behind in the field. They just don't take it. And the farmer doesn't have time. And anyway, the market's flooded with potatoes, because all potatoes come out in the Northern Hemisphere at about the same time. So therefore, they get ploughed back in very often. So there's obvious waste. But it gets worse than that. In the same building, not very far away, is somebody who's buying ready meals from a manufacturer of food who's making things like shepherd's pie, which of course consists of mashed potato. So only these people aren't talking to each other, either in the supply chain or even inside the organisation, the buying organisation. So being able to sit back and take a systems view and see all the connections, we can bring them together so they have a conversation. And that way you take the whole potato crop, you give the small knobbly ones that the consumer doesn't want to buy loose, to the mashed potato, it gets turned into mashed potato, you use the whole crop, so there's nothing wasted. So by connecting up suppliers and connecting up operational silos inside organizations, we can share knowledge around energy and efficiency and water. We can optimize capacity. We can turn one company's waste into another company's input. So we've had mushroom farmers with waste mushroom transporting the mushroom, giving the mushroom to cattle farmers as cattle feed. So all sorts of things like that. And when you add it all up, they're all little things, but when you add it all up, it's huge.
And you just used 2 examples there from the food industry, potatoes and mushrooms, but pretty much probably every industry.
It goes for every industry. It's the same.
Yeah,
Food's not an exception.
Yeah.
we do have a figure because the Sci Business School did a study on food, and they reckon if we could normalise best practice and make those connections across supply chains, there was £24 billion that could just be saved in Europe just by connecting that up.
That's amazing. That's a hugely substantial amount of money.
Yeah.
And André, coming to you and AkzoNobel, how important is R&D, when you're working towards a sustainable agenda?
Very important. It's key to sustainability, and innovation is key to long-term sustained business success. And when you start at a higher level, you would say, well, we all know the big challenges. When you move to a world with 9 billion people, new emerging middle classes of 3 billion people, and at the same time tremendous scarcity of fresh water, fiber, volatile fossil fuel prices. The challenge for our type of industry is to become much more efficient across the entire value chain, together with our suppliers and together with our end users. But then the good news, it's also a story of optimism. Sometimes we discuss the challenges in the world in terms of doom and gloom, but you could divide all the energy and all the resources that are used in the world in just 5 key segments. About 40% of all the energy and raw materials are used in buildings and infrastructure. Then we have transport and mobility, consumer goods, industrial and energy generation, and agriculture. And we happen to work in 4 of these segments. And the good news is, big transformation is possible in these market segments, and it's already happening now. Buildings and infrastructure, we know that we need to go to energy positive, carbon neutral, full recyclability of raw materials. Transportation can become 80% more efficient. Big companies have their plans ready today. Consumer goods, we are still so wasteful, we need to design and develop products that we deliver, mobile phones, we contribute to mobile phone or iPad or whatever, but we need to design them for full recyclability. And energy generation, industrial, we need to know that we need to become at least 4 to 10 times more eco-efficient. But then it's possible to live with 9 billion people on one planet. Yeah. And now for a company like ours, we start to see better and better how our innovation will cater for the needs of these end markets. For instance, our insulation materials, LED lighting, the products that we develop for wood protective coatings, fire protective coatings, we contribute to the transition in the housing and construction market. And so it's not just about reputation, that's nice, but it's about innovation, to working together with our suppliers in our own operations and delivering these new, more sustainable solutions to these end markets in order to help them to save energy, to help them to save natural resources. And
also as well, we're talking about sustainability and the environment in general, but a lot of what you're talking about there is going to reap huge commercial benefits to those companies. Their costs are going to be lowered, and ultimately, presumably they're going to get more profit.
Absolutely. That's the simple word we use is sustainability is business, and business is sustainability, nothing else. And then in our type of industry, we are of course in a very resource and energy intensive industry across the value chain. For us, the key driver, the key contribution we can make is to become much more resource efficient for every product we make, for the value we generate. And that's our only chance of long-term success. It's also our driver for long-term business success.
I think that's right. I think we do need to understand it's not just about efficiency gains. So if you think about white goods, aircraft, vehicles, appliances, I mean, they are all getting more energy efficient as they are modernized. But the sheer growth in use and ownership of such things is also rapidly growing. So that sheer growth in consumption often wipes away the efficiency gains that sometimes companies are making. So I think they need to think a bit more about sort of getting out of relative improvements and getting to absolute improvements. So despite business growth, despite consumption growth, really trying to reduce resource dependency. And I think that means it's about the things we've been talking about, but it is about shifts into transformational changes.
Right. New business models. It's going to require new business models.
Exactly. Well, I'll just jump in. I don't want to interrupt you, but there's a question come up here because we're live, of course. Don't forget you can tweet your questions or use the box on the screen. One's coming in from someone called Perva Tavri, and it says how to change corporate behaviour to move up the waste hierarchy towards reuse. So probably it's examples of how waste can be put back into the system.
And in fact, some things can be not classified as waste.
Yeah.
So part of what we've got to do is change our business models to thinking that we have to produce something, use something, and then have to recycle it. In fact, why are we not using it and reusing it and reusing it? Which means notions of ownership have to change. We're seeing this already with car clubs, aren't we? Where people, instead of buying cars, are increasingly part of buying a club who own cars, and you use it as you need it. And we're seeing DIY retailers doing very interesting things with paintbrushes, where they're beginning to say, don't buy the paintbrush, effectively hire it from us. And when you've finished using it, just slop it back into the envelope, seal the envelope, send it to us, and we'll industrially clean it, and we'll reuse it again. And that'll stop us having those garden sheds that are just full of those, I've got them.
Guilty.
Those little guilty here, exactly. And that's what we need to move away. And that's about understanding new commercial models and business models, as well as just, as you're saying, being more efficient at what we're currently doing.
Yeah, I could give you 2 examples in our type of industry, both upstream with our suppliers. We still get lots of packaging materials. We buy these packaging materials, drums and cylinders and plastic containers. But in fact, we are not interested at all in our company to buy packaging materials. We just want to get the fluids at the right moment in time. So it's interesting to make a deal with these big key suppliers of ours to move into a model where we say, well, you own the packaging materials, you deliver to us the transportation at the right moment in time. In the end use of our products, there's something where we can still make huge improvements. In the past, too many of the products we made contained hazardous materials. And therefore, at the end of the use phase, they were not considered recyclable materials, but hazardous waste. So it's for us of key importance to work with the building industry, the Skanskas, or the transport sector, Maersk, or the L'Oreals or the Unilevers, work with them and make sure that we move far beyond compliance, far beyond European REACH legislation, move away from these hazardous materials that disable you to recycle, prepare, design your products and processes for recycling, reuse, in fact, towards the cradle-to-cradle concept.
Right. And that requires a redesign, doesn't it?
It's
right
redesign.
from the beginning.
It's redesign. You need all of your research and innovation department, your product stewardship people, but also your marketing people and sourcing people in your own company to rethink these production processes. And they need to be able to go to your source, to your suppliers. What do we need? What can you deliver to us? We need to have part of your innovation in order to deliver these new and more sustainable products to our customers.
And it's the circular economy. Yeah, so that is the circular economy that's getting quite exciting. People are starting to talk about it more, and it is about reorganisation in the way you say, and getting business ecosystems going to really get those waste resource cycles going. Even co-locating factories together. British Sugar pumps its waste heat, its waste CO2 next door to one of the largest greenhouses in the UK to grow the tomatoes. And then the sharing economy, which Martin you mentioned, is the other piece, the collaborative consumption, providing shared access to goods, not just ownership of them. And I think the bit in that space, there's very few players that are really experimenting. And I would like to see a lot more retailers, a lot more big players really starting to test out what works and what fails, so that you really start to learn lessons about how does sharing really take off.
One of the challenges, I think, one of the reasons why it's all happening slower than we'd like is because we're not yet good at communicating up and down the value chain, and not just up and down it, but across it. And so that we need new interrelationships and connections to make all of this happen. We need consumers to behave differently. We need suppliers to work with design teams they've never worked with before, with marketing teams. We have to use the digital technologies we have to connect us up to make this possible.
I completely agree with that concept. And a couple of years ago, when you hear the words cradle-to-cradle economy, closed-the-loop economy, circular economy, it sounded a bit philosophical. And I think we are past that stage. We know how to design, and the technology is available to have these big transitions going. For instance, in our company, we have said that between 2012 and 2020, we want to reduce at least 25 to 30% of all the carbon, but it's in fact all the raw materials, all the energy we use with our suppliers, in our own operations, and with our end users. So it's a new concept of collaboration across the entire value chain. But when you're able to make that change between now and 2020, then you're also able to make that move to the circular economy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, it's not philosophy, it's the new business model. Better reuse the products, recycle, design for full recyclability.
Yeah.
Another question is coming here from James Wilson, thank you. He says, how can businesses take advantage of sustainable growth opportunities? So I suppose really, Martin, is kind of in real terms, how do businesses go about, setting up a course for sustainability within their own model?
Well, I mean, there are a number of ways in which sustainability, as we discussed already, kind of adds value to businesses. And there's clearly opportunities to take market share. There's increasing interest from consumers and from business-to-business customers to have suppliers who are providing sustainable products and services. My favourite example of that happening at the moment is, in fact, around the Irish food agency Bord Bia, who are rebranding and we're trying to rebrand all Irish food produce through a certification program called Origin Green as sustainable and of traceable origin. It's partly a response to Horsegate and some of those challenges. And so here's an opportunity for a country, if you like, to take an opportunity to position its products and services and its food as of a higher quality and of greater sustainability than others.
Which is a benefit to all.
Right, absolutely. So there's definitely a way in which you can seize market share that way. Another way is around securing supply. If you can work with your suppliers and build closer relationships with them and help them become more resilient, and you build a better invested in, lower cost and more sustainable supply chain, you're going to have that source of supply for longer at a time when demand, competition from other people wanting to take your supplies away from you is only growing because of that 9 billion population and that growing middle class.
I think there are new models to move into. So we've talked about circular, we've talked about sharing. There's the move from products to services. There are ESCOs, energy service companies, Mascos, material service companies, the carpet companies, chemical management services. There's also lots of low carbon new kinds of models emerging. So Dong Energy works with Novo Nordisk, not as a customer supplier, but as a partnership. And they consult together on how to release energy efficiency cost savings. And those cost savings get reinvested into additional renewable energy that's supplied back to the business. And that sounds quite simple, but sadly at the moment that's quite unusual. And also there's the restorative piece. What's quite exciting is a few companies now are really looking into the long term. How do they be a restorative or a net positive company? Create more forests than they use, or help customers generate surplus green energy. I mean, that's fascinating. That suddenly starts to unlock a whole new wave of thinking into flipping into new kinds of propositions for customers and new kinds of interventions in the supply chain. And then there is just finally that bit about collective stewardship. If you are trying to protect forests or river basins or fisheries, it really is about collaborative action, getting companies to work with each other, with local communities, with local authorities to improve the governance and management of those natural assets. And that's a thing that we've got to step into. And there is some companies doing this, but we need to see a lot more.
And the good news there is, by the way, it's not only about developing new business models, you see them being developed today. You get a different kind of conversation both with your suppliers and with your customers when you take the sustainability concept central to your strategy. When you talk to, for instance, the big container shipping sector, they have their plans ready to become 70 or 80% more efficient. And they know how to change the hull of the ship, how to move to slow shipping, how to use sail, how to make use of our anti-foulings that will reduce fuel use with 9% because of low drag. But it means that we have to work with our suppliers and with our end users in those segments where people really want to drive a change, and then you work together on research and innovation to drive that change in an accelerated way. And it's full of opportunity for our marketing research people, our sourcing people to select these key customers and these key suppliers that want to make that change. It's opening up new opportunities for innovation. Today we spend about 380 million euros per year on innovation. 2/3 of it is purely based on sustainability improvements.
There's two things that I want to just pick up on before we come to an end, because sadly we've only got 20 minutes here today, and it's clearly something we could talk about all day. One question's come on Twitter, and then also, André, we'll talk about Planet Possible if we can as well. But collaboration, this has come on Twitter, I'm not sure it's from. Collaboration is the key to sustainable business, but it's the competitive nature of industry that's holding back progression, which is kind of understandable. So how can we aid collaboration Because I imagine, I assume what this person's getting at is there's a lot of businesses that are almost cautious of involving with other businesses because it's going to be against their own competitive nature.
There's not one answer to this, but we have 34,000 professional members at the moment on our platform, working together, sharing best practice, sharing insights, experience, trying to solve problems. And within certain particular programs, you have to clearly identify the thing which is going to encourage people, give them permission almost to share with their competitors. And sometimes that's so if we were talking to your supply chain, sometimes that's a customer saying, I'm going to reward you if you share with your competitors.
Right.
And so you have to have these very obvious rewards in the system, because people are giving away their intellectual property. There's quite a lot of collaboration taking place at sort of standard settings level. So there are certain things as industries that have to be done. I'm sure this is your experience. And at that level, it's quite easy. It's when you drop down to the next level of how do I really implement things faster and better and to reduce costs and impacts or to innovate business models. And this does get tricky.
Yeah, and I think actually a lot of companies are coming to the point that if they want to, for example, protect various freshwater systems that they depend upon, they might be particularly good at abstraction and pollution management. But if the neighbour is terrible, then the risk remains. So actually most companies, or a few companies, we work with Coca-Cola and Procter & Gamble and H&M and Sav Miller, and they understand that coming together around critical river basins and other freshwater systems is good for business. So coming together is critical. And then actually, when it comes to propositions to the customer, they do get to shine in their own way. Yes. And their marketers kick in to say, okay, we've worked together in the supply chain, but now let's stand out from the crowd and present our visions. And you've got net positives and decouplers and zero noughts, all these, these sorts of things. And that's quite, that's exciting.
But this kind of cooperation also requires new behaviors. For me, a great example was when we visited some very proactive furniture industries like Hayward, Herman Miller, Steelcase. They all want to become cradle-to-cradle companies. And then they said, AkzoNobel, we need your powder coatings that enable us to do the curing of the powder coatings at much lower temperature. And then we need to select those key suppliers that enable us and that provide us with the resins that make that change happen. Initially, in our own company, we found some resistance. People said, well, our researchers said, then the other company can look in our jewel box of innovations. So yes, but we can look in their jewel box. It is about leadership to develop a new way of cooperation, because you know that combined knowledge, combined innovation power delivers more than when you work in silos. So you need your leadership to enter into conversations with these leading customers and leading suppliers to really make that change happen. But let's not forget, it's not only about business. It would be slightly arrogant to say that business can make change happen. Definitely, you need the power of the NGOs, the government setting rules about hazardous chemicals, fuel efficiency, insulation of housing and construction, fuel efficiency in cars. The NGOs, the academia, the coalition of the willing should cooperate to accelerate the pace. Technology is there, but sometimes we need to overcome the political hurdles, structural financial barriers, or social cultural barriers. I call it the PEST model. The politics, the economics, the social cultural behaviors, we need to overcome them. Technology is there, and that's the message of optimism, but we need to overcome these barriers.
And these all sound like things to me that is what you got AkzoNobel thinking about Planet Possible. This is all the kind of like the build up to that.
Yes, it's not a dream, it's not an easy pathway, but we are all together on the journey to make sure that 9 billion people can live within the planetary boundaries. We state Planet Possible, but it's not an easy trajectory. You need to work very, very hard to make that change happen and to accelerate pace. And it's not the business as usual model. We need to transition these market segments that I mentioned: housing, transport, agriculture, consumer goods. We can't move on the current pathway, but we are able to do it. It's possible. Planet Possible.
Planet Possible. I think we'll leave it there. We are out of time, but it's good to hear that obviously things are moving in the right direction, and by the sounds of it, in safe hands. So thank you very much, chaps.
Thank you.
There we are. We have run out of time, as I said. Thanks once again then to Dax Lovegrove, Martin Chilcott and André Veneman for joining us today. If you would like to find out more, then you can. If you want to find out more about sustainability, then go to all the W's, www.akzonobel.com /planet possible. Thanks ever so much for watching. From myself, Kev Harris. Until next time, goodbye.